2000, they sat again in Cotonou in Benin and came again with the Cotonou Convention. And once again, it ran its course, and the Cotonou Convention did not give birth to anything. In 1980, the World Bank and the IMF, the so-called Bretton Woods institution, sat in New York and said that Africans needed something called structural adjustment. Africa is always the laboratory of new ideas that are conceived by European economists in European universities, and they came here with structural adjustment programs, and they told government, you have no business being in business. African governments listened to them, and whether you are in Nigeria or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Accra, Ghana, or in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, there was only one eloquent voice being heard from London, England, and from Washington, D.C., and from Paris, France, telling us, sell all your assets, sell your telecom companies, sell your power companies. We sold them, and they did not perform, and they went back to think of yet another experiment, and I suspect that that experiment is globalization. Why do I suspect that that experiment could be globalization? Because the Western world is never asleep. I remember under the aegis of the United Nations, and the United Nations is a good thing. But remember that when the United Nations organization was created in 1945 in San Francisco in the United States of America, none of the African countries were independent. We were not there. And remember that when they constituted the United Nations, they created something called the Security Council, and no African country sits at the Security Council. Remember that the world is structured in such a way that meetings are held in the world. The first meeting that is normally held is the G7. They were G8 until they expelled Russia. Now they are the G7. When they meet in Davos or they meet in Glen Eagles in Scotland, the 7 leaders of the most powerful economies in the world meet. Occasionally they invite the president of Nigeria because it is the most populous nation in Africa. Occasionally they invite the president of South Africa because it has a large economy, and they also invite the chairman for the time being of African Union. And the first and the last time that you see those presidents is at the photo op. After they have taken the photo on the first day, they are told, you go home. You go home. That is meeting number 1, the G7. Then there is another meeting of the G20. The G20 is a meeting where a few African countries may find themselves. Nigeria finds ourselves there. South Africa finds ourselves there. Occasionally Egypt finds ourselves there. Sometimes Algeria finds ourselves there, but their participation is minimal. Then there is another meeting of the rest, which all the 54 African countries belong to. I am submitting to us that at the dinner table where serious things are discussed, Africa is always under the table picking the crumbs and assuming that the party is under the table while the real party is on the table. I'm submitting to us that when we talk about globalization, we must ask ourselves, could globalization mean what I'm suggesting it means? But let us ask ourselves, when we talk about the challenges and the promises of globalization, let us ask ourselves what it is that we are talking about. When we talk about globalization, we are saying that the world has become one. We are saying, as the great South Korean writer Ha Jun Chang has written in his book, The Bad Samaritans, we are saying that globalization means that when an item is produced in China, that item should find its way in Nouakchott in Mauritania without any barriers. We are saying that when we talk about globalization, there is one market. We are saying that when we talk about globalization, our borders disappear. We are saying that when we talk about globalization, we are talking about the dissolution of borders, and we are talking about the death of time, because technology now allows us almost to travel instantaneously. The question is Africa prepared for that thing? You know, several years ago, in 1980 to be exact, the former Tanzanian President Julius Kambarage Nyerere was asked the question, do you believe that African countries should play as equal players in the world economic arena? Because Europe and America now say, after the WTO rules, that the rules and the field has been made level. This is what Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere said. He said that in boxing, the boxers are divided into several categories. There are heavyweight boxers, there are light heavyweight boxers, there are bantamweight boxers, there are featherweight boxers, but the rules of boxing are the same. If you take a heavyweight boxer and put him in the same ring with a lightweight, on the argument that the rules are the same, that is not boxing, that is murder. I am submitting to us that whenever we are told that the rules are the same, we are being invited to commit suicide. Because, ladies and gentlemen, tell me, if the President of the United States of America, whose economy has a GDP of $14 trillion, invites the President of Burundi, whose GDP is $2 billion, for a bilateral agreement, even if there are 21 gun salutes, even if there is a red carpet, it is not a meeting of equals. That is the reality. And yet we are being told that the United States of America is a sovereign state, and Burundi is a sovereign state, and I agree. I'm being told that Germany is a sovereign state, and Sao Tome and Principe is also a sovereign state. I'm being told that Benin is a sovereign state, and France is also a sovereign state, and therefore they are meeting on an equal and a level playing field. If Africa is invited to such a boxing match, and Africa is not one, sometimes Africa is presented as if it was a single country. No, it is not. I am therefore submitting to us that we must interrogate ourselves whenever we are told that the field is level. But there is something unique about Africa. Why do I say there is something unique about Africa? People are always meeting about Africa to define Africa and to define what Africa needs. They met in Berlin in 1884 and divided Africa. They never stopped there. Today, everybody is meeting about Africa. The Chinese meet in Beijing, and they invite our leaders to Beijing. Why are they inviting us? Is it because they love us so much? I doubt. Why is it that once China has invited us to Beijing, Japan also invites us to Tokyo? Is it because we are so beautiful that we are loved by everybody? I doubt. Why is it that once we have been invited to Japan, we are also invited to Washington? Is it because we are so beautiful that nobody can resist us? Why is it that when Washington has finished with us, Europe also invites us to Brussels? Are we so beautiful that we cannot be resisted? And why are we so beautiful that even Russia now invites us? Are we so beautiful that the next person to invite us will be the Arab countries in Doha, in Qatar? We must ask ourselves why we are being invited. As you are asking yourself, I know why we are being invited. We are being invited because Africa is the home of the things that everybody wants. Everybody knows that Africa has all the things that are desirable. And if you doubted that Africa had everything, you start to look at your African map. If you want gold, you go to Johannesburg, up South Africa. In fact, the other name of Johannesburg is Igoli, which means gold. If you want diamond, you climb a little and go to Namibia and to Botswana and to Lesotho, and you find diamond there. And if you want uranium, you just go to Zimbabwe. And if you are tired of looking at uranium in Zimbabwe, you climb the ladder a little and you go to Zambia and you are confronted with copper. And if you are tired of copper, just rise to the Democratic Republic of Congo and you'll ask yourself the question, what was God thinking when he created Congo? What mineral is not there? Everything is in Congo except nothing. That is Africa for you. And when you move out of Congo, you go to the armpit of Africa. As if things can only be hidden in the armpit, you find oil in Equatorial Guinea, and you find oil in Angola. And as if oil was condemned to reside in that part of the world, you find oil off the shores of Gabon. You find oil off the shores of Benin. You find oil off the shores of Cameroon. You find oil off the shores of Nigeria. You find oil off the shores of Ghana. And if you are tired of oil and you now want to go into agriculture, you go to Ghana, and when you are looking for cocoa, and before you see cocoa, you meet gold. And if you rise a little up there, you go to Cote d'Ivoire, you meet cocoa. And if you are tired of West Africa and you go to West Africa, come to my Kenya, you meet tea, you meet coffee, and you go to Tanzania and to Ethiopia. What did God not put in Africa? That is the continent that everybody wants. That is the continent that they say must now embrace globalization. That is the continent that they now say that continent must open our borders. We know it when they tell us to open our borders, and we are being told that is a game of recourse. I refuse to accept. You know, I do not claim the monopoly of knowledge or wisdom, but I know a few things. And one of the things that I know is what globalization should not mean. I know two things, what globalization should not mean and what globalization should not mean. Globalization should not mean that when fish is produced in China, the fish should be marketed in my rural village in Kenya to the detriment of our fishermen. If that is what globalization, we must reject globalization. I refuse to believe that when globalization means that when I want to take a taxi in Lagos, Nigeria, or in Accra, Ghana, there must be an application by somebody sitting in Tallinn, in Estonia, or San Francisco in the United States, running companies called Taxify or Bolt or Uber. If that is what globalization means, then I don't want globalization. If globalization means that when I am at the airport in Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport in Abuja, or Muritala Mohammed in Lagos, Nigeria, or Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, or Tambo in South Africa, that my food must be prepared and my things must be run by Swissport from Switzerland, if that is what globalization means, then I do not like globalization. If globalization means that Nigeria can produce oil, but that oil cannot be refined in Nigeria, it must be taken by Mobil, by Exxon, by Total, by Elf, then that is not the globalization that I desire. I refuse to accept a globalization that says that diamond is produced in Namibia, in Lesotho, in Botswana, in Sierra Leone, and in Liberia, but the price of diamond is determined in Antwerp in Belgium. I refuse that globalization. I refuse a globalization that says that cocoa is produced in Nigeria. It is produced in Accra in Ghana. It's produced in Cote d'Ivoire, but the largest coffee producers are Cadbury in the United States of America, in the United Kingdom, and the largest producers of chocolate are to be found in Switzerland, Godiva, Ferrero, and Lindt. I refuse that globalization. I refuse a globalization that says that when I want to send my letter, it must be DHL based in Bonn in Germany. I refuse that globalization. I refuse a globalization that tells me that when I'm moving money from Ota to Lagos, it must be G4S in the United Kingdom that tells me and provides me with the means of protecting my money. That is the kind of globalization that is being talked about.
Leo zimesikia Raila ameenda.